Today, we're going to talk about the all-elusive, all-powerful, and barely nerfed Spellslinger Essence Drain Contagion Soulrend. So, why should you choose Spellslinger over the other League starters? Well, its main strength is the extremely low budget requirement that it takes to play this build. And with that low budget comes some of the most insane clear speed you can find on a League starter. The clear on this ability from level 24 feels like a fully geared mapping character. I love it, you're gonna love it, and this is going to be my League starter. Let's talk about the mechanics of the build real quick. Spellslinger is a support gem that causes the linked spells to reserve mana when you activate it. The spells linked to and activated with Spellslinger will trigger when you fire a projectile out of your wand. You can activate multiple spells with multiple Spellslinger supports, which is what we are focusing on with this build. We will have 3 Spellslinger setups. The first one is Essence Drain, the second, Contagion, the third, Soulrend. All 3 spells will be cast at the same time every time we fire a wand projectile. This effect occurs whether you use a wand attack skill gem or just the default wand attack. So why do we use Essence Drain, Contagion, and Soulrend? Well, it's because of the high damage over time obtained from gem levels and the spreading mechanic of Essence Drain and Contagion. When an enemy affected by Contagion and Essence Drain dies, the Contagion on that monster will spread the remaining duration of both Contagion and Essence Drain to nearby enemies that are within Contagion's radius. This interaction allows us to spread a very high, long-lasting damage over time effect to many enemies, most often clearing multiple packs with this one effect. We will also use Soulrend since it is a chaos damage over time spell. It has very, very high chaos damage over time, but a very low duration, so you will have to cast it very often. The Soulrend will not spread to nearby enemies, but the Soulrend projectile will pierce and heat seek towards enemies, and when nearby enemies, it will apply its chaos damage over time debuff. One extremely important thing about Essence Drain is that 0.5% of the debuff damage is regenerated as life, which gives us crazy sustain for free. We can change this regen to Energy Shield later by picking up Zealot's Oath once we go full Energy Shield. The last and most interesting thing about Essence Drain Contagion is that we can use increased rarity support on our Contagion, because when our Contagion spreads the Essence Drain damage over time, it counts as Contagion's kill and attributes the rarity from Contagion to any enemy killed by spreading it. If this doesn't make sense, just trust me and put rarity on Contagion, as it won't increase the mana reservation, so it's free rarity. Where does the build struggle? There is always a give and take with most Path of Exile builds, especially for League starters. With great clear speed and minimal investment comes low single target, in this build's case. This is a trade I'm willing to make, as the clear speed is so insane and I can invest what I make back into the character. This is the question you have to ask yourself. Is it worth it to have very high clear speed but lower single target? This build will need a heavier investment if you want to stay Spellslinger, and it will require you to improvise, adapt, and overcome. But if you're okay with transitioning to self-cast Essence Drain Contagion, then it should be very easy if you pay attention. Next, let's talk about how Essence Drain can scale its damage. We mainly scale off of gem levels, chaos damage over time multiplier, and generic chaos and damage over time nodes. For our clearing and single target abilities, we will be using Essence Drain and Contagion for the clear, and for single target, we will spam our Blight and Wither totems down and our wand attack, triggering our Spellslinger support and applying Soulrend onto the boss. We spam our wand attack because Soulrend only has a 0.6 second base duration, scaling up to about 1 second, so you want to apply the Soulrend damage over time effect very frequently. Our primary defense will be the Acrobatics chain and the regeneration we obtain off of Essence Drain, alongside our Patient Reaper Trickster Ascendancy. When we make the swap to Energy Shield, whether that's low life or CI, we'll primarily rely on a very high Energy Shield pool and mechanical skill to dodge boss abilities. For our Ascendancy, we will start with Patient Reaper, as the life, ES, mana on kill will give us very good recovery alongside our Essence Drain life regeneration. Next, we'll pick up Ghost Dance for Ghost Shrouds, giving reduced damage taken, ES recovery when losing a Ghost Shroud, and movement speed while we have Energy Shield. From Merklam, we'll pick up Escape Artist for very free evasion rating on Energy Shield helmets, and Energy Shield from evasion chest pieces. We also get a ton of attack speed while we have 3 Ghost Shrouds, stun immunity with Ghost Shrouds, and 10% spell dodge. Lastly, from Uberlab, we'll pick up Prolonged Pain for skill effect duration, reduced damage over time taken, and 20% more damage over time. Now that we're talking about the path of building, you need to pay attention very, very hard, okay? I need you to focus. When you are changing trees and changing gear sets, you need to make sure you're on the correct and matching tree and gear set and skill section. For the trees, I have 1 through 12, 12 through 35 with Normal Lab at 35, 35 to 55 with Cruel Lab at 55, and 55 to 70 with Merciless Lab at level 70, before Kitava at least. The Moderate plus Self-Cast tree will work for League Start, Cheap, Moderate, and the Self-Cast swap whenever you are feeling your Spellslinger lacking. The Expensive Self-Cast tree will be for the expensive Self-Cast gear set. And lastly, the most important thing to pay attention to is to make sure if you are using the end game low life tree that you are using end game low life items from this gear set, as this is a completely Energy Shield based tree now because we have swapped to an Energy Shield based gear set. For Spellslinger, it is going to be an absolute breeze through the entire game through white and yellow maps. It is going to be super easy as long as you pay attention, follow along, and get the correct items. But once you hit red maps, you will have to transition to self-cast. Spellslinger is too difficult right now to keep going throughout the entire game, so you need to accept that you'll have to go self-cast once you hit red maps so that you can get more damage and more survivability. During the cheap and moderate section, you are okay to use Spellslinger, but once you hit the self-cast swap, we are using a staff now, so you will have to be a self-cast character, which is okay, as we will have enough cast speed from Trickster to make it feel very nice. So let's talk about leveling really quick, as I have an extensive skill set right here, and you need to pay attention to make sure you are using the correct skill set. From 1 to 4, we will be using Blight, with Infused Channeling at level 4 and Void Manipulation at level 8. Once we hit level 4, we're going to pick up Contagion and use it for our Clear ability, as 1 Contagion cast should take care of any normal pack of monsters with a little Blight casting needed for the Magic Pack. At level 4, we're going to pick up Frostblink. At level 10, we'll take Flame Dash after Brutus and Smoke Mine at level 10 as well. Because of the movement speed buff it provides, it is very nice if you can Smoke Mine and Flame Dash. You can have your left mouse button be Detonate Mines, which makes it much easier to use a Smoke Mine, as you don't need a whole extra button to press for your mine detonation. At level 12, once we get to the Mervale Cave and you hit the Mervale Cave waypoint, you can go back and pick up Essence Drain, as this will now be our clear and single target ability, linking it to Void Manipulation at level 8 and Control Destruction later on at level 18. We're going to use the Essence Drain and Contagion combo that we talked about earlier to clear most of the packs in the game now, with a little bit of Blight supplementing our single target on bosses. Once we go to Act 2 and level 16, we're going to pick up Skitterbots because the shock does work with damage over time. Now, once you hit level 24, you need to get or have already 3 alterations. You can obtain 3 alterations by identifying rarer magic items and vendoring them, but they need to be identified or else you will only obtain transmutation shards. Before Piety, on the way there, kill Gravicius so that you can obtain the Spellslinger support, as the quest reward for killing him is unlocking the ability to buy Spellslinger and Soulrend. And I recommend picking up Spellslinger or Soulrend from the reward for killing Gravicius. Now, you can obtain true power and true clear speed. It's going to start feeling as if you are playing maps during the leveling, and this is why I think it is so fun to play this. We are going to use Essence Drain, Spellslinger, and Void Manipulation, Contagion, and Spellslinger, ignoring item rarity until Act 6 Lily, and Spellslinger, Soulrend, and lesser multiple projectiles. Now, we can run all of these linked because if you were following the tree, we ran down and we got Charisma as soon as possible. This is very important as you need the reduced mana reserved for you to be able to use the Spellslinger supports. If for some reason you are having mana troubles at this point, feel free to drop lesser multiple projectiles off of your Soulrend setup or Void Manipulation off of your Essence Drain setup. Once you hit Act 6, please get Wither Totems, as they increase your single target damage by so much. Wither is a debuff that makes enemies take 6% increased chaos damage. Stacking up to 15 times means 90% increased chaos damage. It's crazy, dude. To trigger our spell slinging setup, because remember, we do need to wand attack to activate all of the spells that we're reserving with Spellslinger. We will be using Frenzy. We can pick up Frenzy in Act 2, and if Frenzy hits, we obtain a Frenzy charge, which gives us more attack speed, movement speed, and damage. We will link this later on to Curse on Hit, but for now, pick up Despair and just self-cast it on the bosses. Later on, linking Curse on Hit, so that your Frenzy automatically applies Despair for you. Now, these setups alone should carry you all the way through the game, all the way up to maps. Now, we are going to talk about mapping until red maps. And hey, if you have 0 mana, if you are having struggles with your mana reservation, check the notes section or come to my stream and ask me a question. For our Essence Drain setup, we are going to use Spellslinger, Essence Drain, Controlled Destruction, Efficacy, Void Manipulation, and Swift Affliction. For Contagion, we are going to use Spellslinger, Contagion, Increased Area of Effect, and Item Rarity, because remember, this is going to apply anytime our Contagion spreads with an Essence Drain on it. It is going to count as Contagion's kill, giving us free rarity. Lastly, we're going to use Soulrend, Spellslinger, lesser multiple projectiles because it has a lower mana multiplier compared against greater. Greater makes this reserve way too much, so we are going to use lesser multiple projectiles. And lastly, if you can fit it, we're going to use Efficacy on our Soulrend because it's going to increase its spell damage, damage over time, and most importantly, its skill effect duration. We are going to pick up the gloves Allelepathy, which gives us damage over time and a level 22 Blight skill. With this, we can support it with Spell Totem, multiple totems, Efficacy, and Controlled Destruction. But these need to be in the glove slot as they need to be linked to the Blight setup. In our weapon, we are going to use Frenzy, Despair, and Curse on Hit to proc our Spellslingers to get Frenzy charges and to apply the Despair Curse to any bosses that we are encountering. We are going to, for our movement ability, use Flame Dash at level 7. We need this at level 7 because its mana cost needs to add up to 16. We gain Arcane Surge. When we support Flame Dash with Arcane Surge, we will gain the buff Arcane Surge after we spend 16 mana with Flame Dash. So having this at level 7 and your Arcane Surge at level 2 is extremely important, as this gives us more spell damage, increasing our Essence Drain, Soulrend damage as well. And lastly, we are going to use Immortal Call on our left mouse button so that it procs on cooldown, giving us less elemental and physical damage taken. For one socket, this is pretty nice. Now, we're going to move on to the self-cast section. Self-cast swap. Please pay attention for swapping. Alright, for the self-cast, we will no longer be using Spellslinger because we are casting ourselves. We're going to use Essence Drain, Empower at any level above 2, Efficacy, and if you can afford them, the Awakened versions of Controlled Destruction, Void Manipulation, and Swift Affliction. For the self-cast auras, we will use Malevolence, Zealotry, Discipline, and an Enlighten. If you cannot afford the Enlighten, it is 100% okay to drop Discipline, as the Malevolence and Zealotry alone will give us a lot of damage. We are going to use a self-cast Blight setup in our body armor now, using Blight, Controlled Destruction, Efficacy, Infused Channeling, which also gives us a 10% more damage boost to our Essence Drain, Void Manipulation, and Swift Affliction. For Contagion, we will use Contagion, Increased Area of Effect, Intensify, giving us even more area of effect while we are moving, and Flame Dash for our movement ability. Lastly, we will still be using a Wither Totem setup with multiple totems, Spell Totem, Wither, and faster casting to get our Wither stacks up quicker. Alright, one last gem setup. I promise. This is going to be low life, so you need to pay attention. These are the gems we're going to swap out if you can hit the end game low life tier of this build. We are going to lose the self-cast Blight setup, and in its place, we will obtain more auras. Now we can get Vitality and Arctic Armor, as well as Discipline, Blood and Sand, and Aspect of the Spider in our boots. If you have Aspect of the Spider on your boots and you socket in Blood Magic, Aspect of the Spider will be supported by Blood Magic. And if you do wish to use Blood Magic to reserve on your life because we are low life and we would like to hit the low life state, you need it to be level 20. As the higher the level, the lower the mana multiplier is. If you look, right now, level 20 Blood Magic has a mana multiplier of 196. Because if you get a level 1 Blood Magic, the mana multiplier goes to 245%. So any mana cost associated with anything linked to Blood Magic will increase by 245%. This is why we need it to be at least level 20, so the mana multiplier goes down to 196. For our Bandit choice, we will be choosing the 2 passive skill points, as we are not a crit build, so we do not need to save a Lyra. Our Pantheons will be Soul of Arakali for reduced damage taken over time, Soul of Shakari for reduced chaos damage taken and chaos damage taken over time on caustic ground. We want to make sure to upgrade this to Terror of the Infinite Drifts as well, as we want to upgrade Soul of Shakari with a Divine Vessel. Killing the Desert Spring boss with a Divine Vessel in the map device will give you a captured Soul of the Terror, which you can take to Sin, and he will upgrade this minor Pantheon for you. This is very important, as we now have 50% less duration of poisons on you, and we cannot be poisoned if there are at least 5 poisons already on us. This will help us out on annoying poison bosses and Conqueror. Lastly, let's talk about our gearing section. On the League start, the only thing that we absolutely need to obtain are +1 Chaos wands. These are very, very easy to find, as you can find them right away at the exact start of the game. They should be very cheap to find and buy on Path of Exile trade website. If you can get a shield with +1 chaos spells, that is also very nice, as we obtain free block by having +1 chaos on our shields. The +1 chaos spell skill gems is very good for our Essence Drain, as that is where most of our damage is going to come from, especially later on. We are going to be solely boosting Essence Drain's levels so that it gets more and more base damage and more total damage. Every other slot in our League Start scenario just needs to have life and resistance crafted on it, as we need to have our resistances capped before we hit maps. Our flasks are going to be a bleed immunity life flask, a granite flask with heat. With our flasks, most of the immunities can be swapped around, as you do not need to have bleeding specifically on a life flask. You just need to have, in total, bleed immunity, freeze immunity, and warding somewhere on your flask. We need bleed immunity to get rid of annoying bleeds and corrupting blood on us. A granite flask is nice to have for increased armor, so when we do take a hit, we take less damage. We need heat. We need of heat so that we can unfreeze ourselves when a strong box or other monster that does cold damage freezes us. Having a jade flask with increased evasion rating during flask effect is very good, as it increases our evasion rating by a ton, which lets us recover more energy shield because of Escape Artist. You absolutely need to get warding somewhere. We've talked about this, and we're going to talk about it every single build guide, because warding is that important. I would rather have warding than freeze immunity. Not bleed immunity, okay? But warding is still really important, all right? You gotta get warding on your flask, okay? I'm going to say it one last time. You need it, all right? You need warding. And lastly, we are going to get a silver flask, giving us onslaught, which translates to movement speed, attack speed, cast, which is very nice. And if you can get anything else on there, that is nice as well. Next will be our cheap tier of gear. This is very, very simple. We are going to stick with our +1 chaos spell skill gems, wands, or wand and shield. We are going to get allelopathy sorcerer gloves for the level 22 blight skill, damage over time, AoE, and hinder duration, which makes enemies slower for longer. The only big upgrade that we want to be looking forward to is a corrupted 6-link armor. Our Essence Drain setup in a 6-link is going to be 4 blue. Our Essence Drain setup for Spellslinger in a 6-link is going to be 4 blue and 2 green. So we are going to go to the Path of Exile trade website, and we are going to look up 4 blue links and 2 green links. Now, it is going to be a corrupted armor, but we have already narrowed it down to the exact links that we need, so we don't need to worry about how we cannot change the colors by chroming it. Now we are going to look for body armors, and we are going to buy on League Start. The prices will be much less. It will be 15 to 20 chaos, but we are going to buy any 6-link that we can. If you can find one that has resistances or life on it, those are bonuses. But the 6-link alone is worth it and enough for us for 15 to 20 chaos. How people obtain these cheap 6-links is by running the Vol side areas. That lets monsters have a chance to drop corrupted items when you kill them, or the little Vol cache at the end, where you get the skill gems and sacrifice fragments, also has a chance to drop corrupted 6-links. It is also very important that you do the Bathhouse Act 8 shield charging guy. Alright? He shield charges around, he's a unique monster, and he's in the Bathhouse in Act 8. If you take care of him and go back to town, you can pick up a Conqueror's Efficiency, which we will need for the 2% reduced mana reserved at the bottom of the gem. This is very, very important and lets us run additional auras and links on our Spellslinger setup. Every other piece and our flasks will remain the same. So your first upgrades, very simply, are a corrupted 6-link armor and allelopathy. For moderate, the next upgrade that we are going to be looking forward to is a Witchfire Flask, giving us a damage over time during flask effect and Despair Curse aura, which will help our single target and our clear. When we pass by monsters, they're going to take extra juicy damage from our Despair aura. We are also going to obtain a Stygian Vice, and inside of it, we are going to put an Onslaught on Kill Abyss Jewel. This lets us obtain Onslaught not from a flask, but from our jewel, which is why we can replace our silver flask with a Witchfire Brew Stibonite flask. If you can also afford it, a Transcendent Mind Cobalt Jewel gives us a lot of damage over time multiplier per 10 intelligence on unallocated passives. This jewel alone is almost giving me, at this point in the game, 100,000 damage per second. If you find them, or can buy them, increased maximum life and chaos damage over time multiplier are very nice rare jewels to obtain. Now, moving on from the moderate tier of gear, I highly recommend that you start to try and obtain Awakened Skill Gems, as long as Spellslinger is still feeling very, very nice. Otherwise, if it still feels good, play with it up until red maps, but once you hit red maps, you will need to change into self-cast. So we are going to drop both wands and obtain a very cheap Cane of Unraveling, as even a 6-link version of Cane of Unraveling is extremely cheap. We are going to pick up the Vertax Vol Mask, giving us plus level to our auras, and a lot of evasion and energy shield, which we can take advantage of and get even more evasion rating from the energy shield on our mask because of escape arts. For our body armor, if you're feeling like you need to survive a little bit more, you can pick up a Kintsugi. Otherwise, you can stick with your 6-link corrupted chest piece, and so that you do not need to buy a 6-link Cane of Unraveling. Although the Kintsugi is very nice to obtain, so that we take 20% less damage taken if we've not been hit recently. For our gloves, we are going to try and obtain a Hunter-influenced fingerless silk glove with chaos damage, overtime multiplier, and life and resistance. Our boots need to have a lot of movement speed at this point, so we can zoom through the maps and make even more money. Alongside this, life and resistance is good enough. Our amulet, if you can afford it, should have a +1 level of all chaos skill gems and some life and resistance as well. Our rings are going to be nice life and resistance, and our belt is still going to be a Stygian Vice with an Onslaught on Kill Abyss Jewel. This should start to carry you through the red maps and allow you to save more money so that you can swap to the more expensive version of Self-Cast. The most of the cost for this setup comes from this bow. Now, if you've played this before, you probably recognize this bow. You roll the +1 level of socketed gems, and you come to me, and I'll multi-mod it so it can have up to 3 crafted modifiers. I'll craft the +2 level of support gems and the chaos damage overtime multiplier. Now, you do not need to have this bow anytime soon. This is just a cute little upgrade you can work towards that feels extremely nice to obtain. As you can see, with a Cane of Unraveling and some Wither stacks on a boss, at this point, our Essence Drain is going to be doing around 1.5 million dot damage. When we obtain this bow, we are going to get an extra 300,000 dot DPS, which is about 20% extra total damage. This will also allow us to pick up a quiver, as we don't get to use anything in our offhand slot when we're using a staff, but with a bow, we get to use a quiver, and we will choose Soul Strike, as it gives us extra energy shield, attack speed, and faster start of energy shield recharge. We are still going to use the Vertax Mask, as its +1 levels is very nice, and it has very, very good evasion, energy shield, and chaos resistance. For our body armor, if you can pick it up, a Hyries Ire is extremely nice for this build, giving us an extra 10% dodge for attacks and spells. Being Trickster, remember, Escape Artist gives us +1 maximum ES per 6 evasion on our body armor. So, with a Hyries Ire equipped, we go from 1200 energy shield to 1900 energy shield, giving us practically 700 extra effective HP. This is also including acrobatics, which makes us have 30% less energy shield. We are going to keep the Chaos Dot Multi gloves, the Life and Res boots, our +1 Chaos Amulet, our Life and Resistance rings, and the Onslaught belt. Although now, with the more expensive version, we are going to pick up Intuitive Leap and a Cluster Jewel setup. Intuitive Leap allows us to unallocate this node and these two nodes, letting us just spec into the good stuff. We are also going to pick up a Cluster Jewel, Flow of Life, giving us damage over time, life, and life regen, and Exposure Therapy, giving us damage over time multiplier and chaos resistance against damage over time, which is extremely nice. And if you can afford a small Cluster Jewel with Fettle, it of course is very nice, as we are still life at this point in the build. Once you swap to self-cast, make sure you start to use the self-cast setup skill gems, as dropping all of those Spellslingers lets us run a bunch of extra auras, which boosts our damage so much. We are getting more damage over time and skill effect duration, and more spell damage, and a chance to make some consecrated ground. We will also start to use a self-cast Blight setup to apply some Wither stacks alongside our Wither totems, and because it gives us infused channeling and some nice damage on top. Now, for this last gear set, you need to make sure you are balling, alright? You've got to be a huge, enormous, galaxy brain gamer, alright? Because you are going to have to go from a life-based build to an energy shield-based build and an energy shield-based tree. You will have to buy regret orbs, and you will need to respec. As you can see, there is a drastic change in how the tree is structured between expensive self-cast and the end game low life build. Now, you do not need to be end game low life for this build to feel good on Cyrus 8 or through the red maps and Conquerors. This is just if you're a huge gamer and you like to juice it up, alright? We're going to stick with the juicer bow and the soul strike, but our helmet is going to get -9 chaos resistance, a 40% increased essence drain damage enchant, and a lot of energy shield. We're going to use Chevron's wrappings, allowing us to go low life because chaos damage will not bypass our energy shield. We can use that and reserve our life and mana, allowing us to run even more auras and obtain even more damage. The gloves are going to be super juicer, a lot of energy shield, chaos damage over time multiplier. Our boots, we want to get aspect of the spider on, and movement speed and ES. Our amulet can get 2+ levels, chaos and dexterity skill gems, and chaos damage over time multiplier, as well as a champion of the cause anointment, giving us 4% more reduced mana reserved. Our rings are going to be high energy shield and spell damage from Shaper. Our belt is going to be a Shaper Crusader belt with increased ES from our body armor, spell damage during Flask effect, and a lot of energy shield. Now keep in mind, a Baited Breath is only 300 less energy shield. So Baited Breath is probably the right option for most people. We are going to pick up a Dying Sun, giving us just a little bit area of effect and allowing us to shoot 2 additional essence drains every time we cast, making it much easier to hit a monster or pack. With our self-cast, we can get a Watcher's Eye for, even if it's nerfed, a % of maximum mana as extra max ES while affected by Clarity, and damage over time multiplier while affected by Malevolence. The cast speed by Zealotry is just a nice little bonus. Now that we're Energy Shield, we're going to pick up an Energy from Within, transforming the life on this hybrid wheel to only give us Energy Shield. So these become 8% nodes, and this becomes a 16% Energy Shield node. We will also pick up Pain Attunement as we get 30% more spell damage on low life. And this is why we go low life. Pain Attunement is so good. I highly recommend while you're going through these builds to click and unenable this section that you are no longer doing. So now, low life expensive, please pay attention. We're going to lose Self-Cast Blight and get more auras. So we're going to enable this and unenable the Blight and the auras from the previous section, while keeping the Self-Cast Essence Drain, as these gems will not change, as well as Contagion and the Wither Totem setup. As you can see, this is the easiest way to super juice your Essence Drain damage. So we can hit now 3 million DPS with just our Essence Drain. As you can see, the simple act of going low life and reserving our mana, when we allocate this, we obtain 30% of our damage. This equates to 700,000 damage over time DPS. We go from 2.3 million to a 3 million DPS Essence Drain. This is why you see everybody who's a big juicer with any kind of spell pick up Pain Attunement and a Chevrons and go low life. You get to reserve more auras because we can use our life alongside our mana pool for mana reservation, and you get 30% more spell damage. It's crazy. This is so much damage. You feel it instantly as soon as you go low life. It is so worth it. Anyways, I hope this guide helped you with your league start, as it definitely helped me plan and prepare for mine. Now, I will be trying to push the limits of Spellslinger throughout the game, but I couldn't in good faith recommend you guys to try the same. I really think Self-Cast is now the way to go, as we have too much mana reservation with the Spellslinger increases, but I'm still going to try it out. And I recommend, if you want to try it out, join me at Twitch, down in the description. Go ahead and follow me and all that. Alright, anyways, follow, subscribe, you know, the whole thing. Do it all, alright? I appreciate it. Also, comment if you've got questions. Come hit me up in Twitch. Do whatever, alright? Just don't be mean about it, alright? Just relax. I'll help you. Just, you know, try to be chill, okay? Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Peace out.